In 2024, Klarna, the Swedish buy now, pay later company, made a very confident announcement. Their AI assistant was handling 2/3 of all customer service chats. It was doing the work of 700 full-time agents. Customer satisfaction was on par with humans. Resolution times dropped from 11 minutes to under 2 minutes, and they said it would save $40 million a year. The CEO went on a victory lap. The press loved it. It was the AI disruption story everyone had been predicting. And then, quietly, through 2025 and into 2026, Klarna started hiring customer service staff again. Not because the AI failed exactly, but because when you strip out human judgment from complex escalations, emotionally difficult situations, and high-value customers, the volume metrics look great and everything underneath starts quietly bleeding. Klarna is now running a hybrid model, human agents for the things that actually require humans. IBM and Duolingo have their versions of this story, and I want to talk about what's actually going on here, because I think most commentary on AI and jobs is getting 60% right and missing the most important 40%. This 40% has a name, and it's called the Jevons Paradox. Welcome to Career Jam. This channel is all about AI's jobs news, guidance, interviews, and insights on how you can navigate your career in the age of AI. Don't forget to subscribe or share it with a mate who you think needs help right now. Let's dive in. So, the Jevons Paradox, it's a 160-year-old economic concept, and it's very useful for mid-career professionals navigating this moment, and many of the key thinkers in AI have been mentioning recently. So who was Jevons, and what did he notice 160 years ago? William Stanley Jevons was an English economist, and in 1865 he published a book called The Coal Question. Britain was burning through its coal reserves at a rate that alarmed people, and engineers had just dramatically improved the efficiency of the steam engine. The popular assumption was logical. A more efficient engine uses less coal per unit of output, so total coal consumption should never fall. Problem solved. Jevons said, when you make a resource cheaper to use, when you get more output per unit of input, you don't reduce demand. You expand it, because now things that weren't economically viable before become viable. Industries that couldn't afford to use coal efficiently now can. New applications emerge. The whole universe of what coal can power gets bigger. And he was right. After the steam engine got more efficient, Britain didn't burn less coal, it burned more. For decades. That's the paradox. Efficiency gains increase total consumption rather than reducing it. Now, let's fast forward to 2026. AI is making cognitive work dramatically cheaper. Writing, analyzing, coding, summarizing, planning. The cost of a unit of that output is collapsing. The intuitive prediction is the same as the coal prediction. Cheaper cognition means less demand for human cognition. Fewer jobs. Jevons says, when cognition gets cheaper, you don't just do the same amount of cognitive work more efficiently. You do cognitive work you couldn't afford to do before. You experiment more, you personalize more, you build more, the job changes, the task changes, you iterate faster. The universe of what's economically worth thinking about gets bigger. And that's exactly what we're starting to see in the data. Not everywhere, and not uniformly, not without the real disruption that's coming, but it is there. The classic Jevons employment case is bank tellers and ATMs. This one is worth knowing because it plays out in almost every AI jobs debate eventually. From 1988 to 2004, ATMs cut the number of tellers needed per US bank branch from 20 to 13. The obvious prediction was bank teller employment would collapse. What actually happened was that there were more bank tellers in 2024 than in 1998, because ATMs made branches cheaper to run, banks opened more branches, and more branches needed more tellers, now focused on complex transactions and customer relationships rather than cash handling. The job didn't disappear. Now, I want to be balanced here because there is a real counter-argument and it matters. The Jevons effect is real, but it's not uniformly distributed. The expansion of demand happens at the top of the capability distribution, not at the bottom. The New York Fed found that underemployment for the distribution of who captures that demand is shifting upward. The entry level is getting squeezed, and mid-career and senior roles are broadly okay if you can demonstrate the right things. Okay, so what what does this actually mean if you're 10, 15, 20 years into a career and trying to navigate this? I want to give you 3 specific ways Jevons plays out at an individual career level, because understanding the macro pattern is useful, but what you can actually do with it is more useful. This is the ATM bank teller dynamic. When AI makes a type of cognitive work cheaper, the universe of people and organizations who afford that work expands, which means demand for people who can direct, contextualize, and quality control that work also expands. Think about what's happened to content marketing since AI writing tools arrived. The prediction was that copywriters are finished. Cheaper content production means fewer copywriters. What actually happened? The volume of content organizations want to produce has exploded because cost per piece has dropped. Now they need people who understand strategy, brand voice, editorial judgment, SEO architecture, and the high complexity layer that sits above the commodity production. The commodity layer got cheaper, the contextual judgment layer got more valuable. Your mid-career expertise is the contextual judgment layer. The question is whether you're positioning yourself as someone who provides it. This is the one that gets the least attention for mid-career professionals, and it might be the most actionable. When AI makes cognitive work cheaper, the total amount of cognitive work in the economy grows. New industries become viable, new business models become possible. The scope of what organizations try to do expands. That expansion creates demand for people with deep domain expertise, because the cheap cognition needs direction. AI doesn't know what question to ask, what outcome matters, what context to apply. But here's the critical point, that expertise is only valuable if it's visible to the right people. Jevons expands the market. It doesn't automatically drive opportunities to you. You have to in some way signal that to the market. And this is why mid-career professionals are most at risk right now. They're the ones whose expertise is real, but oftentimes invisible. They're often doing excellent work in the context where people who matter can't see it, with no signal to the expanded market that Jevons is creating. So here's the counter argument, because the optimistic Jevons perspective can be a comfort blanket that stops you from taking the disruption seriously and doing something about it. Jevons does not mean, don't worry, it'll all work out, there'll be heaps more jobs, you just don't know what they are yet. There are 3 real limits. Limit 1 is the distribution. The first limit is the distribution problem. As I said earlier, the expansion in demand goes to the top of the capability distribution. If you're mid-career and your expertise in tasks that AI now does well enough at the commodity level, you need to move up the judgment stack. The expansion is real, but you have to be positioned where it lands. Limit 2 is the timing problem. The coal question wasn't resolved overnight. The ATM didn't create more bank teller jobs in 1 year alone. There's a transition period, often measured in years, where displacement is real and expansion hasn't quite caught up. There's a gap. For individual careers, the transition period can be career-ending if you don't navigate it actively. Be aware, know what's going on, and take action. This is not a reason to be pessimistic. It's a reason to move now rather than to wait for the labour market to self-correct around you. Limit 3 is the structural ceiling. Forrester and the Yale Budget Lab both published findings this year suggesting that AI jobs apocalypse is largely speculative, and that many companies citing AI layoffs are actually rationalizing pandemic-era overhiring or positioning themselves as AI forward for investors. We're hearing a lot of this mostly under the topic of AI washing. Models get more capable and agentic AI matures. The Jevons expansion may not keep pace with displacement at a task level. We just actually don't know yet. The honest answer is Jevons makes sense right now. In 3 to 5 years, it's unclear whether the theory still holds, which means the strategy isn't relax, Jevons will sort it out. So here's 3 things you can do with this Jevons insight. 1, identify where your domain is expanding and not contracting. For every domain that AI is disrupting, ask, where is the total market for this capability growing, not shrinking? Content, yes, commodity writing is cheaper, but the market market for strategic content capability is larger than ever because more organizations can now afford to compete in it. Legal. Yes, contract review is being automated, but the demand for legal judgment, interpretation, risk framing, negotiation strategy is growing. Find the expansion in your domain, and that's where you position yourself. Move from execution to direction. The Jevons dynamic rewards people who direct AI rather than people who do what AI does. This is not about knowing which tools to use, it's about developing the judgment that those tools lack. What does your domain knowledge tell you that a language model doesn't have access to? The informal knowledge, the stakeholder dynamics, the history of how decisions actually get made, the politics, the personalities, the pattern recognition that comes from years of you being in the room. That's the thing that you need to be making visible and deployable because it's the thing that the expanding market is willing to pay for. 3, you have to be findable by that demand. This is often uncomfortable for a lot of mid-career professionals who build their career on doing excellent work and letting it speak for itself. That works well in a stable market. In an expanding repricing market, it's just not enough. That intersection is the precise place where Jevons expansion is creating demand. Is there an association, an alliance, a professional body that you can connect to lift your awareness of what's happening in the area that you work in, create that visibility? Jevons was writing about coal in 1865, and he probably didn't imagine anyone would be using his paradox to explain the AI jobs markets 160 years later. But the logic is the same because the underlying dynamic is the same. When you make something cheaper to produce, you don't shrink the world that uses it, you expand it. The labour market right now is being repriced, not eliminated. The Klarna story is not a story about AI winning. It's a story about the first wave of replace everything, running into the limits of what AI can actually do, and being followed by a more sophisticated version of the same question. What exactly needs a human and what doesn't? The mid-career professional's advantage is that the question is real. You have accumulated judgment, domain context, and relationship capital that AI doesn't have access to. The Jevons expansion creates demand for exactly that. This is your opportunity moment, but you have to position for that. Waiting for it to find you is the equivalent of being a bank teller who learned how to count cash really well and assumed that it would remain their job. That's Jevons, and that's your career strategy. Thanks for joining us on Career Jam.